Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. Here I am outside Methodist Central Hall in London. Now, Methodists do not have cathedrals because that's too like the Catholic Church. A cathedra is a throne upon which a bishop sits in a cathedral, and the Methodist Church has no bishops or archbishops either. It doesn't call its religious leaders priests, they're called ministers. Higher up there might be a president of the Methodist Assembly and so on. He or she is elected for a short term. They rotate it regularly. So they've got no Pope-like figure. There you can see at the top. Anyway, the Methodists decided they should have a very large church in London because they were a very large religious denomination in the late 19th century, almost as numerous as the Church of England. And here in England, people were considered Anglicans by default, unless they were known to be a member of another Christian denomination, such as being a Catholic or a Baptist or something. People simply assumed that this person was an Anglican, and if someone died, had no family to claim them, the Church of England would perform the funeral. But the Methodist Church also wanted as many Methodists as possible to be involved in the construction of this church. They asked for every Methodist to contribute a penny, well, or as much as they could, but everyone to at least do that. So they all feel that they had ownership of this. So it really was a mass project. I can't zoom in, but I wish you could see some of the features. They've got fasces there, that very popular symbol of the late 19th century, early 20th century, bundles of rods relating to ancient Rome, and their musical instruments like horns and so on. The striking thing about it is the relative lack of religious imagery. Look at the big window, and towards the top there are two angels, but apart from that, nothing. No Jesus Christ, no Blessed Virgin, no saints, no crosses, because the Methodist Church is not iconographic. It began in the late 18th century, but John Wesley led it, partly as a reaction against what he felt was excessive ritualism in the Church of England. He'd been an Anglican clergyman himself, as was his brother, as was his father. And moreover, the Church of England was not providing adequately for the growing proletariat, more people moving into cities due to the Industrial Revolution. So he wanted simpler worship, Bible-based worship, somewhere that the working class felt welcome, because they didn't have their Sunday best. Some paupers felt they weren't welcome in church, they felt embarrassed. But he said, no, come one, come all. And they tend to be against alcohol, that's not actually a rule, and even against tea in the 18th century, because people were beggaring themselves, spending lots of money on tea just because it was fashionable, even when they couldn't afford it. Back in the 18th century, tea was pricey, but you won't find a Methodist church without a teapot these days. So there's an enormous worship space in there and a stage. The chairs are put out. It doesn't really seem like a church on the inside. It really is a hall. It has been used for other purposes, debates. Indeed, Stephen Fry and Christopher Hitchin inveighing against the Catholic Church, with a Nigerian Archbishop and Anne Widdecombe speaking up for the Roman Catholic Church. That's about 10 years ago. Other things, well, most notably, the first General Assembly of the United Nations met here in January 1946, because London was one of the few cities in Europe which was not badly damaged. Perhaps surprising they didn't meet in the United States. The UN had been formed the year before in San Francisco, but the General Assembly met here before it was decided the permanent home of the United Nations would be New York City. So, worth going and having a look around. Notably, this is where Margaret Thatcher got married, because her husband Dennis had been previously married. He married in a hurry in the Second World War. Someone he had a relationship for only a few weeks. People tended to do that just in case they got killed. He went off to war, came back, discovered his wife had been having an affair and divorced her. And divorced people were not permitted to wed in the Church of England. So they married here. Margaret Thatcher, or Roberts, as what her maiden name was, she was brought up a Methodist. Her husband was brought up an Anglican, but they married here. So that's it. There is a restaurant in the basement, but it's rather overpriced and not terribly tasty. It's overcooked, boiled out, insipid food.